Thank you.
Welcome, Jim. Yeah, roll call, please.
Member Cahill. Here. Member Chaplin. Member Childress. Member Covert. Member Desart. Member Eckhoff. Member Evans.
Here.
Member Galassi. Member Garcia.
Here.
Member Guston. Member Krajewski.
Here.
Member LaPlante. Here. Member Ozag. Here. Member Rutledge. Here. Member Schwarzy. Here. Member Tornatori. Here. Member Yu.
Here.
And Member Zay.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Here.
Sign in for public comment. No public comment. No vice chair remarks. I may have something under old business. Approval of our minutes. A motion for approval of our minutes Tuesday, June 25th. Any questions, comments, additions, changes? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Show member Childress here. Moving on to budget transfer items. I have a motion for FIR 0122-24. Any questions, comments on it? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to procurement requisitions, finance, member Chaplin's not here. I think it goes to the most senior person, I was told, so that I guess would be the tallest person also. Member Eckhoff.
I have a contract to Edward Hospital doing business as Edward Occupational Health to provide health-related services for TB tests, chest x-rays, drug screening, functional job screening for the period of July 18, 2024 through the period July 17, 2025 for a contract total of $22,48. County board members excluded.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Okay.
Got that down.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Move on to human services. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll move on item 24-1928 HSP 0079A23 amendment to resolution HSP 007923 issued to Healthy Air Heating and Air Inc. to provide architectural weatherization, labor and materials for the weatherization program for the period October 30th, 2023 through November 30th, 2024 to increase encumbrance in the amount of $40,000 for a new contract total amount of $305,567, a 15.06% increase.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion will carry. Move on.
Thank you.
Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 2524, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order issued to Keurig Dr. Pepper, the American Bottling Company, for beverages and fountain drinks for the DuPage Care Center and cafes on county campus for the period July 30th, 24 through July 29th, 25, for a contract amount not to exceed $30,600.
Thank you. I know Member Guston seconded that. So all in favor, say aye. Or any questions? Any opposed? Motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 2624, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Alpha Baking Company to furnish and deliver assorted sliced breads, rolls, and sandwich buns for the DuPage Care Center and cafes on county campus for the period August 5th, 24 through August 4th, 25, for a contract total not to exceed $43,200.
Motion and second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 2724, recommendation for the approval of contract purchase order issued to Medline Industries, Inc. to furnish and deliver various linens for DuPage Care Center for the period August 10th of 24 through August 9th of 25, for a contract total not to exceed $72,000.
Motion and second on. Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? So Member Chaplin is now on. Welcome, Member Chaplin. Moving on to Judicial Public Safety, Member Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I'd like to move on JPSP 19-24, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order issued to Cloud Gavel LLC for the implementation and annual service of the warrant management system for the Sheriff's Office for the period of July 10th, 2024 through July 9th, 2029, for a contract total amount not to exceed $652,500.
Give me a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Member Evans.
Thank you. I'd like to move on JPSP 20-24, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Lauren McLaughlin as a recovery coach coordinator to work with Serenity House and Path to Recovery coaches, probation, and other stakeholders to provide services to the participants in the program for the period of July 9th, 2024 through July 8th, 2025, for a contract total amount not to exceed $37,500.
Got a motion and a second. Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair Krajewski. I took a look at this and I wished I could have found more information about the services that are provided. And I've said this before on this board floor, I think this is a pittance for what we're asking from this company, and maybe that's the way it was put out in an RFP. But I continue to be frustrated by the fact that the people who need our help the most are the least paid in our county. And that's just a comment on how we go about things, the care center, the community services. Those people make the least amount of money with the most education in our county. And I think we ought to do something to equalize that, because these are the people that need us the most. So that's all I wanted to say on this.
Thank you, Member Rutledge. Are there any other questions? I believe, Nick, we're going to be looking at compensation towards a couple months from now. Yeah, so I think we could have a discussion at that time. You bring up a very good point, and some of the members feel that way. I think month or two, when we start talking about compensation, in addition to COLA and potentially, equities, we'll also, can probably have a discussion regarding our compensation. And we're going to hear from Human Resources this afternoon or later today on this presentation. But I know one thing they're looking at too is the old pay study, which has the low end, the high end, and the middle, has never really been looked at for the last maybe 10 or 12 years. I think Chris can address that, but that's something I think she has on her radar to look at. And when, we had top end salaries every year get the COLA adjustment, those top ends go higher when you have 3% on higher number than 3% on a lower number. And I think that, that's something that we can get back and have, a more realistic study done, and then address where everybody sits.
Pardon me, if you don't mind, we did do another pay study during or right after COVID. So I'll hope that they'll reference that. And if we need another one to,
But our ranges from our starting, our codes and our ranges haven't changed. They go up by the cost of living,
Sure.
but they have not changed where people sit in those ranges. So
Thanks,
remember to
Brian.
start.
Thank you. With this conversation, I just wanted to suggest that if we're going to be looking at salaries and compensation, we do it before the budget approval. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I think in the next month or two, I think Nick and staff are coming forward with us to talk about next year's, COLA, potential monies for equities, bonuses, or possibly, or adjusting salaries, et cetera, but it'll all be done prior to the budget. So, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Thank you, Vice Chair Krajewski. I make a motion to approve FMP 003024, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Fox Valley Fire and Safety Company for preventative maintenance, testing, and repair of the non-Edwards system technology, fire alarm, and life safety systems for county facilities for the period of August 28th, 2024 through August 27th, 2025, for a total contract not to exceed $117,500.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Member Garcia, I believe we have an amendment on this one.
Yep, but first I have to make a motion, so I'm gonna make a motion on motion to approve PWP 001524, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Joseph J. Henderson and Son, Inc. for the rehabilitation of the Woodridge Green Valley wastewater treatment plant, headworks, and grit removal process for the period of June 11th, 2024 to November 30th, 2026, for a total contract amount not to exceed $18,869,424.90.
We got a motion and a second. Member Garcia.
Yeah, I move to amend the awarding resolution issued to Joseph J. Henderson and Son, Inc. to state that the contract period shall be effective for the period of July 9th, 2024 to November 30th, 2026. The current resolution states the incorrect start date of June 11th, 2024, which is in fact the date the department issued its notice of intent to award.
Yes. Okay, we got a motion and a second on the amendment. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll vote on the motion as amended
like
with
to
the
read it
July
again?
9th date.
Okay, so now I'm gonna make a motion to approve PWP 001524, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Joseph J. Henderson and Son, Inc. for the rehabilitation of the Woodridge Green Valley wastewater treatment plant, headworks, and grit removal process for the period of July 9, 2024 to November 30th, 2026, for a total contract amount not to exceed $18,869,424.90.
We have a motion and we have a second on that. We have a bunch of seconds, so all in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Member Garcia.
I make a motion to approve PWO 000324, an ordinance regulating parking facilities for electric vehicles on the DuPage County campus.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Move on to stormwater. This is member Zay, so member Eckhoff.
Okay, I'd move approval of SMP 16-24, recommendation for the approval of a contract with BME Electric for the purchase of a diesel emergency engine generator for Armstrong Park Flood Control Facility for the Stormwater Management Department for the period July 9th, 2024 through November 30th, 2025, for contract purchase total not to exceed $153,224.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Member Eckhoff.
Okay, I'd move approval of SMP 17-24, recommendation to enter into an agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois, and Garrisburg Alberts Consulting LLC for on-call professional land surveying service for hydraulic modeling and floodplain mapping assistance for stormwater management for the period July 9th, 2024 through November 30th, 2025, for a contract total not to exceed $600,000.
Got a motion and a second. Are there
60,000, sorry.
motion and a second for
Sneaking an
60,000?
amendment there, but never mind.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, that motion will carry. Move on. Member Eckhoff.
Okay, I'd move approval of SMP 18-24, recommendation for the approval of contract with Martam Construction, Inc. for the Luther High Ridge Flood Relief Project for the Stormwater Management Department for the period July 9, 2024 through November 30th, 2028, for a contract total not to exceed $1,580,699.20.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Member Eckhoff.
Thank you. I'd move approval of SMP 19-24, recommendation for the approval of an easement agreement between the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County and the County of DuPage for a storm sewer within the York High Ridge Forest Preserve for a total amount not to exceed $41,677.38.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Move on to our 8 finance resolutions. Member Eckhoff.
Thank you. I'm going to try and do this the way you did it. I'm going to move to combine and approve agenda items 8A through 8H, all of which are acceptance and appropriation of grants. Then I read them.
Motion to combine them, and then we'll do a motion to approval.
Isn't that how you do it? All right.
Okay,
All right.
second. Go ahead, Member Eckhoff.
Thank you. I'd move approval of FIR.
Okay, a motion to approve the A through E.
No,
A
to
through
combine.
I. A through I. Motion to combine. Was it H or I?
H.
Okay. So we combined A through H. Go ahead, Member Eckhoff.
All right. Move approval of FIR 112-24, acceptance and appropriation of the Illinois Home Weatherization Assistance Program grant in the amount of $426,227. FIR 113-24, acceptance and appropriation, the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services Children Advocacy Center grant for the amount of $346,127. FIR 114-24, acceptance and appropriation of the Victims of Crime Act Child Advocacy Center Services Program grant in the amount of $67,740. FIR 115-24, acceptance and appropriation of the Illinois Family Violence Coordinating Council grant for the fiscal year 2025 intergovernmental agreement for an amount of $49,000. FIR 116-24, acceptance and appropriation of Illinois Department of Human Services Supportive Housing Program grant for fiscal year 25 in the amount of $154,180. FIR 117-24, acceptance and appropriation of the Tobacco Enforcement Program grant for fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $7,172. FIR 118-24, acceptance and appropriation of the Donated Foods Initiative Programs grant for fiscal year 25 in the amount of $103,119. And FIR 119-24, acceptance and appropriation of additional funding for the Illinois Home Weatherization Assistance Program for fiscal year 23 for the amount of increasing the amount from $1,074,096 to $1,982,773, an increase of $908,677.
We got a motion and a second. Are there any questions on any of these? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Items 8A through 8H are approved. Member Eckhoff.
Okay, move approval of FIR 120, amendment to the resolution, FIR 2824 for the addition of certain specifications of work for trenchless rehabilitation and maintenance of pipeline infrastructure.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Member Eckhoff.
Thank you. Approval of FIR 121-24, approval of employee compensation and job classification adjustments.
Motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Member Eckhoff.
And move approval of FIR 125-24, approval of the 2025 holiday schedule, which does not contain my birthday, but so.
Okay, motion is second. Are there any questions on that? All in favor, say aye. And Member Eckhoff.
Keep going. Okay, informational items, I would move to combine 9A, B, and C.
Motion and second, vinyl and place on file the informational items. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our presentations, human resources update. Go to court.
All right, good morning. Thank you for letting me come up and speak this morning to you. I'm Chris Clevenger from the Human Resources Office. I spoke back in February last time and just wanted to reconnect this morning and give you an update as our office has been doing some things that I wanted to share with you. So there's a couple different areas of topics that I just want to touch on to let you know. We'll start with the next slide. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is the first half of the year. Myself, along with Nick Kottmeyer, had the opportunity to go out and meet with each county board, department, and elected official office to just do a check-in, to have an open discussion with those offices and departments to see how our office is doing and what services we could provide or any feedback that would be meaningful for us to see what the needs are from the offices and departments. So we were able to meet with each and every one, and we met in person. And from those discussions, we found that there was some common themes of points that we kept hearing as we went along those meetings. And those are the things I just want to touch on briefly to kind of let you know what we heard. So the next slide. So these are the 5 areas I'm going to touch on: recruitment, training, compensation, engagement with the human resources team, as well as outreach from our office as well. So the first topic I want to talk about is recruitment. The next slide. Thank you. Recruitment has always been on a lot of radar. It's I think on every organization, you know, recruitment is a topic of conversation. So really what we talked about is making sure that departments understood the recruitment process, talked about identifying challenges in the existing recruitment process that we have. We talked about that, you know, how do we advertise? How do we do our outreach? The use of social media is here and very present, and, you know, as recruitment tools. And we also talked about the interviewing format, you know, things such as, you know, meeting and doing in-person interviews versus online interviews. So from that and from those discussions, we're looking at what we can do going forward. Some of the things we're looking at is the actual recruitment process, you know, reviewing and making sure that we create an interactive approach, but also keeping the integrity of the recruitments intact. We also have looked at some of the pain points that we have. We had the opportunity with a renewal for our post-offer physical and testing. We were having some challenges with that vendor. So we went out to bid, and that actually is one of the things on there. So we are trying to see what we can do to improve turnaround time, to get results, because every day is very important to us in a recruitment, understanding that it's a competitive market, and we want to make sure as we engage with candidates that we can move them through. We are also looking at hiring additional staff to fill our vacant headcounts. We've had some success in filling some of those, and we hope with that will increase some of the engagement we can do with departments, promote job opportunities. We're starting to attend job fairs again that are now available, and look at other resources and tools that have kind of emerged to make sure we're utilizing them. So the next one is training. So that's another topic that we've talked about to different departments. And, you know, the need for ongoing accessible training has been asked for. We have, different policy training such as leave policies, workers' comp, and maybe some new policy training that we do. They're looking for, you know, one of the things, a couple of them asked for, you know, what about the interviewing process? What are our do's and don'ts? What can we do? What can't we do? So that would be another one we could do, as well as leadership training, just new topics and refreshers. We do have a lot of people that move into leadership roles here, so they've inquired about that, as well as just different topics that emerge, you know, when COVID came, when, you know, different laws come in, different just environmental things that appear, you know, what can we do to support our staff in our office? So we have started working on creating a video catalog training, and we've worked, you know, reached out to our communications team here to talk about how we can create that. So we're going to start with some of our existing trainings that we have, looking to update them and create new, fresher trainings and make those available to do that. So it'll be obviously a work in progress, but that is something that is on our radar. We also are continuing and have been and will continue to promote, webinars through a lot of our benefit vendors and also through the Employee Assistance Program. They do have a really nice options for training. We do try to promote those, so we will make sure we continue to put those out for employees and leadership to take advantage of as well. The next topic I want to talk about is compensation, which already came up this morning. That is another one that, we do have ongoing conversations with. In those conversations, we talked about pay strategies for new hires and existing employees, as well as understanding the current compensation structure we have here right now. So this, I feel that this has been an ongoing conversation, and it will continue to be. One, the minimum wage still is going up, so that makes the changes, and also the exempt level thresholds for overtime have also gone up as of January 1st. They'll go up again, or July 1st, they're going up again January 1st. So, we have been working with offices, whether it's collective union negotiations, talking about rates in amounts, and also departments talking about market. We look at our internal market, we look at our external market. It's not uncommon when we do, negotiations, we go out and do FOIAs to make sure we get what our comparables are making. We have a hay compensation system in place that we utilize. It is something that, that has been touched on, that we have not had them come in and do a review of us. We did start engaging with them right before COVID started, but with that change, we kind of put a pause on that to say, let's hold off. There's some other priorities that we needed to, support at that time. So that is something, if the board wishes us to consider and look at, we are very open to having the hay compensation group come back in, look at how we're structured, see what changes and recommendations they have for us, because it has been some time. And I agree, there's been a lot of things that have impacted compensation, and it would be something we'd be very open to doing. But just so you know, we have been trying to provide support as we look at salaries and making sure we attract good talent as well as retain talent here at the county. The next piece is engagement with the human resources team. So understanding our office, we talked about, who do I talk to when I need help? Who do I start with? That's was a common question. Also providing that they need support from us. They need kind of guidance or information to help them through different topics and activities. And then also just their ability to meet with us. Can we come in? Can we meet with you? Can we, how does that work? So, kind of in this year, we've had a little bit change of dynamics. And so, what we are open to offering is our department is like a meet and greet. So if there are departments that say, we really just want to get to know the team, put faces to names, we're more than open to having conversations, having those meetings, and making sure they know who we are, and, having that more of a comfort level to approaching us. And then also we haven't really pushed this out yet, but as people are inquiring and want meetings with us, employees, what they have benefit questions, or maybe they're preparing to retire, which is a very popular one, we are starting to welcome meetings again. So we are willing to sit down and talk to employees and make sure that we can provide information to them that they feel comfortable, because it is an exciting time when you're doing things such as a retirement, but there's a lot of unknowns. So we are working to create more of that type of meeting opportunities for them. And even sometimes we can't answer all the questions, but we can direct them to where they need to go and give them the tools they need so they feel confident. The last item on this would be the outreach from the Human Resources Office. What we've heard in those meetings is that they just want to hear more from us. They want us to be present. They request to follow up with new hires. That's something that we don't traditionally do, but that was something that was requested as well. Promotion of resources available to employees, and also how to submit information to our office came up. So we are working on how we can, one, staff up so we can create that outreach capabilities for, the county. One is that we have started, when we find newsworthy information, put in articles in the county newsletter. It's just a little bit to kind of put like, oh, there's HR, a little bit of presence out there. We also are looking to start utilizing the county's new intranet. That's not something we've traditionally done, but knowing our new intranet is, a wide span that all employees can access, we are going to start building information within that area. And then also creating some communication tools as we start getting the feedback, we're seeing the trends needed. We'll create such things in different variables for like roadmap to retirement. Some different things we can have available on the intranet or have available to hand to employees to make sure that they feel that they're empowered with information from our office. So those are the items from that first half of the year of all those meetings. Those are kind of the big things I think to take away from. We are also doing currently proposed policy updates. So you can see here, we have a handful of different policies that we are currently working with the state's attorney's office of crafting and doing some updates on some of them. A couple of them are new. So we, as you can see, there's some just to update current practices to make sure that that's reflected in our policies. Most of them are updates to amendments to laws or acts to make sure that the policies we write support the act and law as written. There is some proposed new policies you can see up here that we're in the works with. So once we have gotten some feedback from the state's attorney, that's in process, we will then reach out to our senior staff and make sure they have the opportunity to look at those policies as well for any feedback or discussion. Once that's done, we will start submitting those policies to the board for consideration, review, and potentially approval. So that's that part. Then the last piece I wanted just to touch on this morning was the Dayforce implementation. So to refresh your memories, back in June of 23, the board did approve the selection of Ceridian Dayforce ERP system to replace the current county's payroll system. Some of the benefits that were identified with this system were a consolidation of various time and attendance systems throughout the county, as well as creating more of an automated electronic workflow, which will reduce the paper that is flowing through the county right now with the process that we have in place. This will also allow for other opportunities for efficiencies that will be realized with employees and leadership as we go along. So in May and June of this year, we conducted multiple tests for the configuration of the system. So all the different modules within the payroll, we have been conducting testing to see if our rules and setup meet the needs that we have. We also are currently, along with the IT staff, pulling data to update the information in the system to run what we call a parallel test to see if what the outcome from the new system matches what the outcome from the current system is. So that's where we are currently working towards. We are also with the IT team working on the new time clocks. The nice thing is we found with the time clocks from Dayforce that we're getting, for those that use that, the current badge system does work with that. So we've worked closely with security and also the badge vendor to make sure we're pulling the data needed to upload and make sure those are working. We anticipate that to be completed and then the time clocks to be configured so we can conduct some testing later this month. And then we're also working with the departments that use Kronos, which is one of the other big time clock groups we have, to make sure, because we're moving from Kronos to Dayforce, because there's a lot of power and information in those systems, that we understand what they have and that this new system is going to meet those needs. We are continually having meetings. We are, as we get the data loaded, then we can go back to having more meetings with departments. There's a lot of things we've identified we still need to start showing and viewing. And some of it will be to discuss appropriate time capture and other key items and needs, such as reports that will be coming out of the system. So back in May, the board did approve a memorandum of understanding for the ROE to come on board with the payroll system. So we are also in this month and last month started engaging with the ROE office to start pulling their information to move their, what we call their non-pay ROE into the payroll system. So that is in process now. So like I said, we'll be conducting parallel testing later this month to start looking to make sure that this looks like we anticipate it to work. As we anticipate a successful parallel testing in August, we will start doing what's called training. So at this point, we haven't had a lot of training. It's been testing and just viewing, but we will start the training piece for our people that do the timekeeping, managers, as there's a manager self-service component that we just haven't had before with the system, along with employee training. So they know how to access the system, how to pull a time, their paycheck, how to request time off for those that are going to be utilizing that part of the system. So all going well with this, we anticipate the first check coming out of the Dayforce system on October 4th, which will be the first pay of the fourth quarter. So that is my update for this morning. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much for the update. And I think, I would support us doing, again, the compensation study with A Group. Just the other day, I was looking at that, and every time I look at that matrix, I see other things on there that just don't make any sense. And just as an example, Cheryl Marquet, who was one of our highly compensated people here in the county, and who also, I think everybody will agree, did a phenomenal job. But if you look at her class code, and I think she was one of the highly compensated and I think does a great job, but between the middle, the mid, and the high range of her class code, she's not even near the middle. She's between low and middle. She's not even at the middle. Yet, I think she was fairly compensated and good. So you look at that, you would think she would be somewhere between the middle and the high. And therefore and there's a number of examples on some of the higher ones. It doesn't get to the point, Member Rutledge was raising the lower ones, but I think you may see the opposite effect. So, and I think, the last time that thing actually was done, because I've raised this issue probably for the last 7 or 8 years.
2009 was the last time we had hay here.
2009 was the last time we did the matrix, and, municipalities, everybody has, your class code, and here's the middle, or here's the minimum for that class, here's the maximum for that person, and then the middle. And so the last time we actually did that matrix was 2009. And I think every time I look at it for a job, I see all the other classifications, and some of them just don't make any sense. And I think even some of our people sitting over there aren't even in the middle, which just means that range is not right. And it's a public document that we're out there saying these are the ranges. So I think we need to tighten it up to what it actually is, and then address where people should be in there. So I think Member Evans, and then Member Evans.
Thank you, Chair. You've been so busy. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. I can tell how much work you've done in such a short amount of time. So thank you for all that work you've been putting in. I just wanted to make a few comments, and, I know it's going to take a long time to, get everything to just implement more, but I just wanted to make a few recommendations.
Sure.
For, I know you've been talking to all the departments, but maybe a staff survey, you're talking to the departments, but maybe a staff survey for everyone, because there's such top-down management at the county, and the people do not have, staff doesn't really have an opportunity to rate their supervisors. And, with such high turnover in some departments, it might point to, hey, there might be a problem here with leadership. So I think maybe a staff survey might uncover some kind of issues that might be happening in some departments. For retaining talent, I think offering continuing education, and webinars are fine, but sometimes it's great to just have something in person. I don't know who's doing the training for, in video catalog. I, for one, cannot watch something, it's really hard to learn from just a video. So it would be nice if, if there's anything that is offered through like COD or something, send someone to training and maybe offer them some kind of certification, so that we are showing that we're investing in their future, in their career development, and it makes them feel valued. And then I think that was it. I think you're doing a great job. So thank you. And, you know, I think we're on the right path. I think a salary survey is long overdue too.
Salary survey and the regular survey.
Yeah, and an employee survey. Yes.
And just
Thank-
on member Evans' point, I was meeting with Jeremy yesterday and Jeremy was talking, because now he oversees a number of areas, but one is animal services, and he was actually going to work on doing a survey for that area. So I don't know if that's something, Jeremy, you may have that other ones could use for other departments, but we were talking about doing that yesterday. So to the point you had, and then I met with Chris yesterday also and asked about just in that certain area, the history of the turnover. And that's something you just brought up that can be looked at for various departments and see if there's a number of turnovers and then address why that is. So, I mean, great points brought up. Next was member Desart.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I have three totally separate questions for you.
Okay.
One is, I noticed early on it said post-offer physical and testing.
Yes.
I assume that's drug testing, but is everybody required to do a physical after they're hired?
No, not always. It depends upon the position. The majority of those would be with the care center, and some physically demanding positions will have the post-offer physical. For physical positions, we just do the background and those. But, you know, we are compliant with IDPH, and, you know, for people with CDLs, we do drug testing and the physicals to make sure that, you know,
Sure.
they meet the compliancy for the
All right.
positions.
Thank you. Secondly, like today, we approved an employee compensation and job classification adjustment. And I've noticed in the last couple of months that we approved that for a couple of people in a department.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks later, we get a new hire in that department. So my question is, are the existing employees in that department, how can I ask this? Are they getting an increase in salary because we've had to bring in the new hire at an increased salary, or am I reading too much into that?
Well, it could be both, you know, some of it is can be market at times, and some of it is kind of restructuring, you know. So when we have those are those movements that are being requested that were not part of the actual budget. So we, you know, per our policy, go to the board for that approval. You know, for new hires, you know, if it's existing positions, you've approved the position and the salary range. As long as it stays within that, you don't need to approve it because you approve it with the budget. However, things outside, for example, ours that we're on the agenda today, it was a reclassification. There's a little bit of restructuring we're looking to do. Some different assignments, you know, have been made. And so it's a reflection of that. And that was not completed as part of the budget. So sometimes it's a little bit of if maybe someone's retiring or they're looking to, you know, shift the structure of the department, those reclassifications will come through. And then at times there's market that just was not addressed in the budget part, or just looking at the shift and changes that we want to maintain and make sure we're retaining
But
staff.
it does happen from time to time that we've had to increase the current people in a department because we're bringing somebody new in who wouldn't accept the salary that the existing people are getting.
I wouldn't say I've seen that so much.
Okay,
I mean,
that
occasionally,
transportation, I'm thinking of the transportation department a couple of months ago.
yeah.
That happened.
Yeah, I'd have to look. I don't recall off the top of my head on that one,
Okay,
but
no, that's
I could say that there could be. We do look at the market, so you're right. There is some market pieces.
And lastly, for me, when I was doing my homework over the weekend, and I know we just approved the holiday schedule, I was thinking, do we give people a floating holiday or 2 floating holidays? Because not everybody celebrates Christmas. There's Eid,
Right.
Yom Kippur, Hanukkah, Orthodox Christmas. I mean, it just seems more equitable to give people their holiday off. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Have you thought about
The
floating
county
holidays?
does not have floating holidays as part of the county board. You know, we follow, I think, all state and federal holidays we observe along with it, but we do have other like personal days, things like that, that have flexibility. But we do not, you're correct, we do not have any floating holidays to offer our employees.
Might be something to look at. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next member Garcia.
Thank you. A great presentation today, and I really appreciate it. The one thing I wanted to mention that I was really happy to see is that you're going to follow up with the new employees as they come in here, because I know that sometimes they come in, they're overwhelmed with the information they get, and they miss some of the benefits that they could actually be taking part of. So I really do appreciate that that's going to be a part of the plan going forward, because I mean, I just know that, you know, from my own experience, you know, sometimes I didn't know what I was supposed to be getting in terms of what I could have signed up for, putting
Sure.
money away or retiring or anything like that.
Right.
So it's
No,
fantastic.
exactly.
So
No, I think that we see the need for sure.
Thank you.
And next was member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, and thank you for your hard work being in this position that you're in. If you recall, I don't know, about 3 or 4 months ago, I brought up the question about the policy that new hires, based on their title position, may be getting the same salary as somebody in that same position for, you know, have been there for 20 years.
Yes.
And so under your discussion of compensation, I do see that pay strategies for new hires and existing employees. So my question is, during your 29 meetings, did that come up? Is that
Yes, it sure did. That
Okay.
did come up, and that is something that the way our compensation is set up now, we do have that flexibility to utilize the range.
okay?
And so, you know, it was a PACE philosophy that was used in the past. We don't have to do that
Okay.
going forward. We can definitely look at that.
Thank you. very much.
For sure.
Thank you, member you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Christine, so much for your presentation. The breadth of what you guys do in HR is really, I think, impressive. So thank you for all the work. I just wanted to say how excited and pleased I was to see in your proposed policy updates a paid maternity and paternity leave that would be up for county board consideration. I think this would be such a huge draw for new employees. You know, work-life balance, that has been a big trend, obviously, that's been really happening for younger generations. And so I just want to know when this may come up for county board consideration, and I look forward to that.
Yeah, that will be, it's in the works. We are currently reviewing it. And so we hope in the next couple months to see this come to fruition and bring to first the senior staff and then start presenting to county board. So we will definitely keep you in the loop as to when we're going to be able to present that to the board for review and discussion.
Member LaPlante.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Krajewski. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the possibility of something
Okay.
that was not in your wonderfully exhaustive presentation that covered so much. It was great.
Okay.
This is about elected officials. Is there any way that HR can provide a code of conduct for elected officials? Because I know obviously there are so many codes and rules that apply to employees, but really nothing for any of us.
So I don't think the county board employee policy and guidelines really would capture that. I think that would be something that would have to be done outside of the handbook, which is kind of what we're the keepers of on behalf of the county board. I don't think if that were to be entertained, I think that would be something that would be done outside of that. So.
Okay, so you're saying it's outside of HR's purview?
Yes, because we really captured the count employees. That's our role, is to touch and support that. So elected officials are not
Excuse me.
Yeah, so I don't believe that would be something that we've ever done under
Mhm.
human resources. So that would be have a discussion outside of that. So.
Okay, I think I understand. So who would the discussion be then if it's outside of HR?
So state's attorney, I think is what I'm hearing is.
Okay. All right, thank you so
Oh,
much.
sure.
Appreciate it.
Of course.
Are there any other questions? I mean, just a little history too, for some of the elected officials. I think one of the things that came up, Chris, was the outreach, both HR outreaching and being more of a resource also. But this goes for many, many years. A number of the elected officials, because their employees were concerned about the outreach and not really getting any support from HR, they've hired some of their own internal people. I believe the sheriff has it, the clerk, even before Candace Adams, had their own kind of HR person to help guide their employees when they wound up looking, say, I'm going to retire, what are my options? And so since they weren't getting that, and I think it may take a year, but to the extent that you start doing outreach and giving not only the ones underneath the county board, but the elected officials, we may see some of the elected officials' offices then not need that extra help in HR. And I don't know how many we have out there. I would like to maybe ask elected officials, but we have a number of elected officials that have their own HR kind of people to guide their employees, because that was the same thing that you just did on your guided tour, was the same thing that they've been asking for many, many years. And as a result, they hired somebody else because, you know, we give them their money and they can do what they want. So I'd be curious how many of those we have. I can't believe we can convince them next year, but if we start doing a very good job with your HR and their outreach and be a support, we may not have to have those elected. I understand why they did it, but that may be something to consolidate. And then I know you had was it 29 employees you said there? 29 head count?
No, we have 17 head count in our department, but we had 29 meetings total.
Okay, we
Between,
had 17, because you've been understaffed for a while. You've had a lot of
we've had some, yeah, we've held on some positions in the past and we've had some
And
turnover.
I know you're moving forward to hire them all. I met two yesterday.
Yes, yeah.
Andy and Ciara.
Andy and
Ciara.
Sydney, yeah. Mhm.
So that's good. You still have a couple more to go.
We do,
Okay.
but we're actively interviewing,
Good
so.
luck, because it's such a big function, support function for all the various elected officials and departments.
Mhm.
So to have a top-notch HR would be great. Thank you for the
Thank you.
presentation. No other questions? Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Moving on, we got our ARPA reallocation presentation.
Hi, good morning. Joe, if we could start with the second slide. Nick and I are going to give sort of a joint presentation this morning. I'm going to start out with, well, I guess I want to say before I start that the most important deadline that we're facing with ARPA is coming up in December. So everything that our team is doing right now is working towards the December 31, 2024 deadline. And so I'm going to start this presentation with a little talk about where we are in terms of spending, but mostly the purpose of this meeting is to work with the board and recap on where we think our risks are. My most important task that I have is to make sure that I spend the money. And that's something that, you know, that we're all really committed to. And it's going to take a fair amount of behind the scenes work, including this process, meeting with you guys, and then coming back and meeting with you again in October and meeting with you again in November and again in December. So this is the start of, you know, the rundown to that date. So, so with that said, I want to walk through a couple slides kind of fast on where we are with the spending. If you could give me next slide, Joe. As of the end of June, we had spent 64, we'd spent $114 million out of the 179. That's about, I think, 64% of the total budget. If the only thing I want you to take away really from this slide is that I think this slide really mirrors where the major purposes of ARPA are. So when we started ARPA, not everybody in this room was with us, but ARPA had two main goals. One was to address the immediate COVID crisis. So so we did that. And I think you can see that when you look at these categories of spending, in the community assistance category, in the economic stimulus category, those are places where we already spent. You know, COVID impacts included, you know, mental health, homelessness, food insecurity, unemployment, business closures. Those were all things that we did immediately starting COVID. The rest of the things, the second purpose of COVID was to address long-term recovery. And that's what you see really in the categories, the big categories that are unspent on this slide. Next slide. So public health. The biggest thing that you're seeing here is the CRC project. It's started, but it's still, you know, we're planning to finish it in 2025. So we have a lot going on with that project. on the county side, we were investing about $15 million on that project. So that's the biggest thing that we have to go on the public health side. Next slide. Water and sewer. These are mostly stormwater projects that we have to go, and I'm going to talk a minute about the water connection assistance program in a later slide, but there is, I guess, unexpended $11.5 million, but I will say that the municipal grants are all going to have October deadlines of this year. So we anticipate those finishing. Next slide. Community assistance, we kind of drew out the slide to help you see what's what. So a big portion of it, $7 million, is for our food program. The piece that's unspent on the food is, as of this moment in time, the Northern Illinois Food Bank contract. LRPA program mostly finished. And in general, this reflects, that this part of the program is mostly finished. Next slide. Campus projects. This is the biggest piece that you're seeing here is, well, some HVAC projects, but also the care center. Care center project, I think the total cost is over $31 million. ARPA is going to pay for 25 million of that. And I think as of the end of June, we had spent about $6.3 million. So that's a major, one of the biggest pieces of the program to go. Next slide. And then here, this slide, the biggest piece here is the Choose DuPage small business program that we ran at the beginning. It's over $16 million. The rest, you can see the funds are relatively small. One of the things that the topic of this meeting about is cleaning up and closing out a lot of these smaller items that are on this slide. Next slide. So the most important part that we're going to talk about today is reallocations of ARPA funds. We estimate as of right now, we have about $1.1 million of regular ARPA that can be reallocated. And we've also have an updated estimate from the treasurer. So treasurer estimates that we have about $1.3 million on the ARPA interest side. So a topic today overall that Nick is going to focus on is the $2.4 million. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about risks. So many of the members here have been here a really long time, have been here through CARES Act. And so they remember all of the work that we did at the end of CARES Act to make sure we spend out the grant. This is going to be similar. And the deadline is fast approaching. One of my key parts of my job is that I'm strategic, because if I'm not, my team isn't, and the board isn't, then we run the risk of losing money and sending money back to the federal government. So we have a series of things that we want to do between now and the end of the year. Like I said, I think this is the most important date in the program. At the very end of the program, we can't really change anything. We can't change any dates on any contracts. We can't change any change orders after the December date of this year. So the last date of the project, well, it's kind of done after this, and we just have to see how the chips fall in 24 and 25. But right now is the time to make any changes. And so the team, Nick, staff all over the county, actually, we're going through all the contracts to make sure that they're going to spend out. So we're doing a compliance review and a budget review. In the last 2 weeks, we probably had 10 or 15 different meetings with people where they came in, they walked through their numbers. We were like, are you really going to spend? And in some cases, they gave us, good explanations. In other cases, we took a hard look at it. And one of the things that came out of those meetings and earlier discussions is there are some places where we want to either close out contracts now, so we know exactly how much money we have before the end of the year, or we want to lengthen contracts. Like, so the first point in here, our first strategy, we know that, the DuPage Senior Citizens Council, they have a monthly spend, and we know it might be close in the last month or two. Well, we're going to extend that contract, so there's no risk that they don't hit it right on. So in some cases, we're going to extend. In other cases, we're going to try to shorten. so that we know by November of this year exactly what they have spent. And that can include, you know, in relation to that, we are going to change some of the scopes of some of the contracts. So for example, water connection assistance. That's the program that we give out for connections to mainline programs. It's run through the Public Works Department. We're going to spend, we know right now, if you look at your placemat, you'll see that there's a fair amount of money left in that program. We're going to do the Liberty Park project. It's not the topic of today's meeting, but we can talk about that later. But we also, as part of the program, when we set it up, it has a lot of small loans that trickle in. Well, they're $3,000. We maybe got one or two in the past 2 or 3 months. So one of the things we're going to do is end that part of the contract. We're going to end that program as of the beginning of August, and then we're going to take that money and put it back in a pot to spend elsewhere. So that's an example of where we're going to change the scope of the contract, change, you know, some of the dates on it so that we can, you know, take it out and re-obligate the money someplace else. We also have something that we talked about in terms of, you know, that we, I think, got approval. I know we got approval from the board before in terms of moving some things to ARPA interest. So just to remind you guys, we haven't done this yet because it's 24 and 25, but salaries are a little bit of a challenge. You know, my team is designated to work on ARPA. We have people all over the county, people on Sarah Hahn's team, on Tim Harbaugh's team, you know, many people that are working on a variety of projects at any given time. And we don't know exactly how many hours they're going to spend. And so what we proposed to you earlier and what we, you know, are going to do is take those salaries and put them onto ARPA interest and, you know, substitute other eligible ARPA costs so that we don't run any risk of having to hit that salary number exactly. So, so that's one of the things that we're doing. We need to make sure that everything is under contract. All the money that we have left right now is obligated where we can. I mentioned when we did the stormwater slide, we're trying to make sure that all the contracts, as much as possible, is going to be spent in this year. So that's a big important piece for us. As long as we know by the beginning of December what is not being spent, we can reallocate. And then lastly, for those of you that were here during CARES Act, we did sort of a swapping at the end. And that meant that we can pretty much use, we have a lot of eligible projects. So if we need to, we can put a project that we're not sure about exactly how much it's going to cost. We can put that someplace else. We can put it on the general fund and substitute dollars up and back. So it's not a super clear explanation, but that's an option for us. And that will be something that we'll be looking at in December when we're trying to close up, you know, all the loose ends. We got a little bit of money here where, you know, we've got uncertainty there. We're going to move things around. So with that said, the most important part of this important slide is to talk about reallocations. And I have a list of reallocation that leads us to the next slide. As of right now, we've identified about $1.1 million to be reallocated. I can talk through the detail. I'm not sure if are folks interested in the details of why we have these reallocations? Like, okay, I'm going to kind of read through them sort of quickly just to give you an idea of what they are. So starting with the Park District, Lombard, Westmont, and both had, we approved money for them for non-payroll expenses that before we spent out the check, they got back to us and said, no, we don't need that much. So we adjusted those money. The Lisle Fire District refunded us over $6,000. Bensonville Village Baptist and Bloomingdale food pantries, they didn't spend all their money by the deadline, so they've refunded us those dollars. The Housing Authority, the ultimate cost of their AV project was less than their original PO estimate. The hotel assistance program, we had 3 checks that returned. The Visit Chicagoland DCVB project the campaign only cost $35,000, so we had a savings there. The sports and arts project run by Choose DuPage, we're not doing phase 2 on the sports side because of the Lamont and Aurora, so we have a saving there. The GSEP budget we've revised. Evidence-based testing, we're gonna do that work in-house next year at no cost. Water connection assistance, I talked about that one already, but we are gonna have some money from the loan side of the project that's gonna come back to us. The diversity piece, I guess it says here, staff of a DMWBE program. We've had trouble recruiting for that. And we also at one point, said, hey, let's wait and see how long it takes us to get things set up and get the resolution passed. We're in the midst of hiring right now for that. We're recruiting. We have one interview being scheduled as we speak. So, but the delay with that has meant savings there. And then food pantry round 1, Lyle Township had some issues with the timeline. So that resulted in a savings of about $58,000. And lastly, Fox Metro, as you might recall that we limited the sanitary district to DuPage County projects, and they've had a lot of trouble meeting that. So we talked with them last week. Nick could maybe talk more about that if we need details, but at this point, we estimate at least $200,000 is coming back, probably more. That's one of the ones that we'll be looking at in the next, October, November, as we get closer, we'll be looking at that, and there'll probably be more coming back on that. So that's just like a sense of what kind of things we're looking at. Part of this is my team. We require that everything is spent and we have documentation for everything that's spent. So for example, if we funded things on the front end for the food pantries, we have to go back and make sure that the POs and the actual documentation for the actual spending match. So they have to show us proof of payments. And that's some of what you're seeing here as we go through and do our own internal audit of everything that's happening here. But it's going to continue. And I think what you're going to see more of in October is places where people have more of a budget risk. So, to be continued on the regular ARPA side. On the ARPA interest side, we recently, in the last week or so, got an updated estimate from the treasurer's office. Prior estimate was 9.3 million. The revised estimate is about 10.6. It is obviously an estimate, but that leaves us with an additional 1.3 million that's unbudgeted at this point, estimated, based on, a few factors have fed into that. So you can see from the bullet points, slightly decreased spend rates, higher than forecasted interest rate, and interest earnings on liquid funds, what the projected rate is there. So that's kind of my part of this presentation. I'm gonna hand it over to Nick, and he's gonna talk about.
Member Ozog, do you have a question you want to ask now, or do you want to wait till Nick does his presentation? Yeah. Do you want to, I know you seem like you had raised your hand. I don't know if you have a question now. You want to wait till Nick's done?
Okay.
We can answer questions at the very end. We'll both be up here if you'd like.
No, I got you down already first, and then I got, remember you second. So, all right. So we'll get Nick done and with yours, and then we'll take the questions.
So
you're
before
first,
I
Member
get
Ozog.
started, I did want to thank Mary Catherine and her team. The number of meetings and the number of what they've done to get to this point is truly amazing. Every single contract, every single expenditure this board has seen, they have been meeting with them multiple times to get to this point. They are definitely safeguarding the money to make sure we're meeting all the requirements, make sure that we are taking full advantage of it. So I would like to say thank you to you and your team. So I get the pleasure of going before you here to say, okay, we've identified 1.1 million and 1.3 million. We have two different groups of money.
probably the most critical for us to talk about is the 1.1 million in regular ARPA funding. We need to make a decision very quickly, what to do with that to make sure that we don't lose that funding. So it's kind of a tricky situation with that, because you need to have projects that are ready to go, can be spent, and are guaranteed by 12/31 of this year. So there's not too many qualifiers that can do it that quick. But we do have a very good plan, I think. The first one, as I said, Mary Catherine said, we have 1.1 million in newly freed up ARPA funding. So we need to figure out, how do we allocate that? What do we do? Our recommendations are in front of you there. The first one, I know that Human Services, the committee, has done a lot of discussion on food pantry infrastructure. This board, I think the last one or the one before, actually approved one of them already out of contingency. This is all the remaining eligible projects in it, and this would finish the food pantry infrastructure that you've been discussing for a while, 356,000. And we are confident that we can get this under contract and meet the ARPA guidelines, and clearly it meets the ARPA guidelines. The other two projects, think of as a combination. We are ready to go on those, which is, there's no risk. It's the campus stormwater design. We've had a fairly large discussion in Public Works Committee about the flood proofing of various buildings here on campus. And this is going to further that goal. And in the 421 HVAC, if you remember, this board already dedicated the construction money. This is the resident engineering money toward that. Our recommendation, because both those will be under contract far more than what you're seeing there. And if, as the year goes on and Mary Catherine and her team free up money, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, as other projects maybe come off, our recommendation is they automatically roll into these two. And then we have a safeguard that we instantaneously, we're not losing the money, we can roll it in it. And those contracts will be for far more than what you're showing there. So like I said, that is by far the most important. The other, the interest, we can do today, we can wait. I'll go through that in a second. But that is not that I don't want to use that consensus word. I know we've had that discussion before, but is this a direction that this committee would like to go? All of these will be under contracts. If you give us the direction, you'll see in the next month or two, all the food pantries, you'll see the design contracts for stormwater and HVAC, if this is the direction that the committee would like us to go.
Everybody okay with that? Member Guston?
No.
I do have a question on that, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
So if we had, well, I did have a conversation with superintendent of schools for Indian Prairie.
I would not do that program under ARPA. Too risky
Okay,
under ARPA.
so
If you
it's-
want to do it, you want to do it on ARPA interest.
I'm going to talk.
So it's more of a mental health.
It would
component.
absolutely qualify, but the problem
Gotcha.
is there's no way you're going to get it under contract, guarantee it's spent. Keep in mind, ARPA, we have such a small window here, and we have, whatever we do has to be guaranteed to be spent. And
By December 31st.
not spent by December, but under contract and guaranteed. There's a lot of contracts we've done with the education side that didn't spend as they anticipated. There's just a lot of risk on that. If this committee wants to go that route, you want to do it under ARPA interest. You do not want to do it under ARPA promise.
So the program's already in place
Mhm.
and they're already spending because they got state grant money on it. Just to kind of fill people in. I received a call from Indian Prairie Superintendent and asked us to consider continue funding and continuing their CARES program, which is a mental health program for the high school students in Matea High School in Aurora. Matea is one of our lowest income schools in our whole district. About 26,000 students struggle with academics and socially post-COVID, post the pandemic. They've actually started a pilot program where they refer these students at no cost to the student after school treatment to a psychiatrist or psychologist. It's been very, very, very beneficial.
They also typically would get their money from the state grant funding. They just got notice that they're not going to get that funding. But they do want to keep the program going because it is something that does help the students and the young people with respect to mental health. So this is one of those programs that last minute I get this information. I know Member DeSart sat on District 204, so I'm sure she's very much aware of the need in that district and the amount of low income that we have in that district and how this mental health program is really helping. And I actually personally, I think it applies to not only regular ARPA, but also the interest ARPA. And it's a program that is going on right now and the money will be spent because it is, you know.
And you're right, it would qualify for both. We are, what we're trying to do is minimize any risk we have for this county. And I don't know what kind of funding we're talking about, but I know you and I talked before. If we get a formal submission from them, we can definitely bring it before the committee for your consideration at that time. But my recommendation would be if we do it, it goes through ARPA interest or contingency within our 24 budget.
And I can send the letter that I received from them also.
I don't know what kind of funding level you're talking about.
I think they're at 250 for the program. And everything is in the letter as to, you know, what they do and how it's been so effective and the funding and everything else. So I'll send that to you guys and you can send it to the board. So that
it's up to the board what they want to fund, obviously, but like I said, I would recommend the known commodities over on the ARPA side.
Great, thank you.
People have some projects and things that they want to do, and I think that's important to give that information to staff as they're developing this current year budget. And we have multiple pots, current year contingencies, next year's budget, number of pots that we can do programs through. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit when I get the whole business about giving some ideas to staff, and maybe we have to have a future meeting. But this one, we have to make sure we get this 101.1 million spent. And then Nick's going to talk about the ARPA interest allocation, which we have a little more flexibility. There's some future funding still numbers there. But again, for the three items here, anybody have questions on if we sure, remember you first.
Oh, thank you. So my question actually goes back to what Mary Catherine had also presented. So it's kind of tied to the regular ARPA reallocation. So for example, you had stated that the staff DMWBE program, $108,141, that was going to be reallocated and then that's going into this recommendation right here, correct?
That all the reallocations, the money that they've kind of pulled back from the contracts that weren't spent for some reason or returned, that is the 1.1 million.
Okay.
That's where that came from.
So then my question just has to do with, will there be money later if we do hire the staff? Is this 108,000 the savings, or will we ultimately be able to fund this going forward from other pots of money?
There's absolutely still money available.
Oh, I see.
That's been a big part of it and if you notice what action we took several months ago, we moved some of this over to ARPA interest. So there is money in ARPA interest. So keep in mind, we're just talking about 1.3. There's 10 million out there of obligations that we have sitting there. The nice thing about the ARPA interest money is it doesn't have the same requirements as ARPA, but it doesn't have a spending deadline. It's just sitting there waiting till, and that component is part of ARPA interest.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, and so a number of these just couldn't be spent by the end of this year, obligated, and therefore they'll come out of a different pot. We just want to make sure that we get everything spent on something we know is going to go through. Remember remember KO.
Thank you. Question. Thank you, Mary Catherine. Boy, this seems like a big job looking at that 64 million and trying to figure out which contract is coming up short and what you need to take care of. Thank you. On the reallocation amount of 1.1, so the two items for campus stormwater and HVAC, were those items budgeted for elsewhere?
Yeah.
So we are now relieving our budget in that area because we're putting it over to ARPA.
So the 421 HVAC, that's probably about, I think it's $6 million project, but the board has allocated that. What we haven't allocated is the resident engineering to oversee that. And so that is we are relieving 25
Right.
budget pressures. That project's absolutely moving forward. We have 50-year-old HVAC and
Yep.
421. We're doing that. Campus stormwater is a little bit different animal because what we've done is we had a very lengthy discussion in Public Works Committee and members A can probably shed more light on this than I can. The flood heights, the rainfall events have increased over time. And we have now modeled our campus on the latest rainfall events. And we have several buildings that are susceptible to flooding. And so what this is going to be flood proofing of the buildings.
But I'm just saying it's relieving our
It's
budget elsewhere.
absolutely,
And
yes,
so
it's
this is
absolutely
good that
relieving
we move
pressure.
it over here, we
Yeah.
use it now so we can get it done with and it opens up over there.
Eh,
Okay. Second question regarding the 1.3 on the ARPA interest. I totally support DuCom, food insecurity, COD funding, choose DuPage, additional future funding. So that is just anything that we possibly can come up with later that
That's
maybe.
what I said in before is the ARPA interest is just sitting there.
Okay.
This is going to be basically $250,000 that is sitting there waiting for member initiatives, whatever the needs are, so that we have it sitting there. There's no downside for having it sitting there because the interest sits there and we'll keep getting interest on our interest.
Okay.
And so more is generated there, so there's no downside. I will tell you with the interest though, keep in mind, not all of it has been generated yet. So we need to
Right.
let it generate.
Right.
This is a projection through, I think, 26, if I remember correctly, for the interest. So it needs to generate. But a lot of our allocations that we've already done at interest won't hit till 25 or 26. So it's actually pretty good. And to your point, the amount of work these guys have done, I will tell you, if you go up to the finance department, it's like a war room with what they have on the dry erase boards. It's been a very impressive what they've done to get to this point.
Thank you. One last quick question for Mary Catherine. The salaries, how you talked about, we're gonna allocate some of the salaries over to ARPA interest, I think you said, right? So the salaries originally were budgeted in our regular budget for salaries. So no, they were ARPA allocated.
Yeah, they were,
Okay.
well, as of right now, nothing has actually happened with it because we're in 24. So we're moving those expenses, the forecasted salaries into ARPA interest.
Okay.
And these budget numbers reflect that swap already.
Okay.
And keep in mind, a
Okay.
number of the ARPA projects, depending on the building, have to be done after hours or on the weekends.
Right.
So there's overtime components to some of our hourly staff. And so because we can't do them during regular business hours, that overtime, things like that are gonna be paid for out of that ARPA.
Great, thank you.
Let's just try, we got a few more questions, but let's just on the ones just on the allocation of the ARPA money reallocation, questions on that, so Nick can get consensus on that. And then if we're fine with that, then we'll move on to the second, because I don't think he finished the interest one. So is anybody got questions just on the the left side, the reallocation? Yeah, okay. Member Zay,
I believe you're gonna call on me before.
well, is this, remember Desarts first, on the left side?
Well, on the left side, I gave my consensus. I think that's.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get Nick
appropriate.
consensus on the left side, and then we'll move to the right side, finish this presentation. Anybody have questions? Member Zay, you have a question on the left side there?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Brian. You know, I am not in favor of this. We're getting this, seeing this. We got the presentation last night. I mean, campus projects, 54.6 million, lion's share. Now we're gonna give them close to another 800,000. I mean, we shouldn't be put in this position where we have to come up with, say, yeah, go ahead and spend this money today. We all have different projects. I know member Chaplin worked really hard on that water connection. I know we're not spending the water, but do we think of anything else to do with it? Maybe a water testing program for these areas that are unincorporated that don't even realize their water may be tainted and they might have to hook on to a fresh water system. Again, campus is getting so much of this. And again, this money is supposed to go to help people. I don't know why we keep taking money and keep relieving our budget. I mean, we have, you know, great campus stormwater design. We have to pay for some of this. I'm sure we have buildings we said that could flood. You know how many houses that could flood in DuPage County? There's a lot. Maybe we can use some of that money for buyouts for people that are on our list that we have hundreds of houses for. I just think it's irresponsible for us to make a decision today on this. And, you know, every like member Gus and everybody's got projects in their area that they should be vetted properly and go through the right committees. Thank you.
Thank you, members A. Are there any questions on the left side that this 1.1 million? The only question I would ask, Mary Catherine made a comment that Fox Sanitary may have actually more money coming back. So should we have like a negative on that left side in case they get more money back? Because it's going to have to be spent and obligated by the end of the year.
Our plan is to keep coming back to you. That's part of the October meeting. We're gonna know better then. They were still.
So 1.1 is going to grow and they're going to be back in front of us again with
Yes.
something else to go for. Okay. Sure. Okay. Yeah, hang on one second. Member Chaplin, I think you have a question on that left side.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Krajewski. So this left-hand side where, you know, the ARPA must be eligible, must be expended by the end of the year. So we do have a couple of months, I mean, to come up with the plan still. I mean, it has to be allocated by the end of the year and then spent by 2026, correct?
It needs to be allocated by the end of December of 2024 and spent by 26. But we need to make sure that there's a guarantee that it'll be spent by that. I mean, you can see right here, we pulled back 1.1 million of existing contracts today.
Okay. Yeah, I do. I mean, that member Zay mentioned it. I do kind of like the idea of doing a water testing program if we could. I don't know if it's possible. Just in those private wells. I think the last time it was done was probably 20 years ago, when we had our water contamination, but something maybe to talk about at a future date. But, maybe giving direction might be okay, but maybe there are some other projects that, board members might be able to come up with that, maybe wouldn't be terrible if we put this off until August or, as long as we have until December to allocate those funds. Just a thought.
Thank you, Member Chaplin, and I think I saw Member Rutledge nodding her head. Maybe the suggestion is move forward with the food pantry, the 356. Member Schwarze's committee's already got that ready to allocate. It's ready to go. I know a lot of board members are for food insecurity. We direct staff to go that way with that one, and we have future discussions on. It's kind of all together, and what we can obligate before the end of the year. We still have time. We have ARPA interest to deal with, and we have other issues to deal with regards to contingency in the upcoming budget. And one of the things I'm to say it now, I was going to say it with the whole business, but all you board members are out in the community. You hear from your residents what you want, what they want, what they think, they need provided. Many of you have been at your district mayor's meetings. I know Guston and Member Garcia brought up theirs, and we were at the Mayor 3-1. We heard from stormwater concerns amongst the mayors. I think we need to have a discussion. Maybe Member Chaplin, you put it on the August agenda, but we need the board members to come up with the ideas and things that are important to them. Remember, you brought something up today. Remember, Rutledge, you brought something up, and staff is going to be coming to us later on with, again, the contingency or the surplus that we're going to have this year. They're going to make their recommendations on what they think. And like Member Zay points out, we do a lot of campus. That was the largest one, but staff just has to listen a few times to our meetings, and that's kind of where they think we want to be. But we haven't had a discussion on things that are important to us, our constituents, our municipalities, and then we can give that to staff. I mean, maybe it's only 4 or 5 people want it, but at least Nick can add it to his whiteboard. And these are things that are important to the board as they're coming to us with, here's what our surplus is, here's what our extra money is, and then we can make decisions as a board, majority, to move forward with projects. It's difficult for staff because they're trying to put what they think we need to use this extra money for, but they really haven't had a discussion. We haven't had major discussions on what we feel. We've heard from our constituents, and as Member Zay pointed out, comes last minute. So as we're moving forward, we're going to address another surplus. The last 4 years, we've had multi-millions of dollars of surplus, and then we have to make quick decisions on, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, instead of coming up with what we feel is important. I asked Jeff to send out those reports last night, but if you look at the reports, like professional services, each of the last 4 years, our budget has been $7 million more than the actual. And again, there were some other ones Jeff pointed out. The overall budgets were always way more than actual. And that's what's caused us to come at the end of the year for a quick, what are we going to do with $10 million? What are we going to do with that? If we tighten those budgets up coming into this next year, we can actually do a lot more programs that we as a board feel are important. A number of you, member Gusson brought up a good one today. I know member Swarzy says we're going to be needing food insecurity, but we need to come to consensus and let Nick and staff know that so that they can add those to the list. And then when they come to us, we'll make decisions as a board, 10 of us, that'll say, yeah, this is we feel is the most important, then this one, with staff input, but with our input. And it seems like we're doing it way too late. But I would recommend we'll do the food insecurity, and then let's hold off on the other ones. Member Chaplin put that on, and we can start looking at the interest. But also, as we move forward the budget, Member Chaplin's, move forward the budget, we can also let staff know all the important programs to us. I mean, remember you brought up, the compensation and maternity leave and for employees. I know, and I see people nodding when they bring that up. Member Rutledge brought up the compensation study too, but we need to start that now going into the budget season. So Member Ozog.
Thank you. I would like to put in a good word for the COD allocation that we have here. Last year, I believe we gave them $50,000, which was the first ARPA money that they'd received. And in the past 3 years, they've put on exhibits, Frida Kahlo, Andy Warhol, and this coming year in 2025, they're going to be doing Hokusai, The Floating World, which is Japanese woodcuts, another big show. And I know that these have definitely driven positive economic outcomes in the area. I can't speak to hotel or restaurant, whatever, but I know that these do bring people into DuPage, whether it's regional, et cetera. But I think that them having this money now when they're trying to do their planning for next year would be really useful. So I'm appreciative to see it here. Mary Catherine, what your team is doing, we all need to visit and see these, but I really do appreciate, and I really would appreciate if we could go forward with this money today. And I'm very pleased to see it here. So thank you.
So, but on the left side, should we just do food insecurity, hold off on the other two? On the left side? Okay, you guys on the, yep, okay, Member Torrentori. Sure, no, it's fine.
Yeah, I have something on both sides, but I'll stay with the left side. Which is fine. I think we should go forward with the money on the HVAC. I mean, so, as I understand it, Nick, this is like the bow to the gift, okay? I mean, we've done a lot of work on campus buildings, and this is finishing up the project.
We're going to be starting HVAC here on 421. It's absolutely going to happen.
So we got to do it.
Yeah, it's got to happen. I mean,
so regardless of water testing and all the other things, I'm sure we can find money to do those things if we deem it necessary. But I don't want to leave the 421 building laying out there without finishing up everything we've done. We've spent $4 or $5 million. I don't want to let that just go off the rails for another 446. So I'm for what you propose.
I mean, the thing we're looking at is, it's what pot to bring it out, because we still have millions of dollars in this year's contingency.
Okay, this is the pot he's recommending.
I'm
keep in
just saying
mind too,
that's our discussion. We are to take it.
The ARPA, on the ARPA side, if we were to do other uses, there's a lot of other uses that are absolutely allowable, but can you negotiate? Can they guarantee it gets done? We're trying to mitigate the risk with what we're proposing. ARPA interest, you guys don't have to approve a single thing on ARPA interest today, but the ARPA proper, the mitigation of risk is what we're trying to get done with this.
Member Garcia.
Well, Member Torrentori just kind of said what I was going to say. As Nick has pointed out, the HVAC project are 50 years old on this building. And, so we need to get going on that. We are going to be going on that. So we need to have the engineering done for that to get done. So that's a plus. I am also very much in favor of getting the design done on the campus stormwater. If you listen to the presentation we had, our buildings are in danger. So if we wait because we don't think that's important and we don't have a design ready, so we're ready to go, we may have a major flood event. It has been happening all around the country. It could happen here. And then our buildings that we've just worked so hard to update are going to be damaged. So I just think that this is a perfect use for the ARPA reallocation, and I will be in consensus.
Sure,
for that.
okay, for the floor, I mean, these are going forward, it's just a matter where where you're gonna take the money from, but
So
that's fine.
The HVAC is absolutely moving forward this year. We have to move forward with it. Campus stormwater design, we would likely push off until 2025 or later, but this would allow us a jump start on the design.
All right, let's show Nick consensus for moving forward with this one. Show of hands. Okay, all right, so we'll go forward, Nick, with what you have on the left side.
Okay.
And then if you want to finish anything on the right side of interest.
So like I said, the ARPA interest, there is, I mean, you can do it now, you can do it in a month, you can do it in a year. That money will always be there and it's going to generate more money. This is simply, hearing from the board members about, different initiatives, different things there. The DuCom shortfall, the one thing, if you recall, that is when the sheriff switched to DuCom from ACDC, that is the 2024 budget deficit that they need. Whether we pay for it now or pay for it at contingency, either one works, but we've got to pay for it. Food insecurity, I've heard that there is a request to have additional money for food insecurity. That you guys will have to develop the program and figure out, but this is basically just setting aside $500,000 for that, for whatever program that is developed by Human Services, the Finance Committee and the board. COD funding, I know the last funding, the $50,000 was very successful for that program. We know that I've heard there's a request out there. We don't have it officially yet for the next program. That is for your consideration. Choose DuPage's Connect DuPage was a very successful program under ARPA. This would be the 2025 continuation of that with Choose DuPage. And what they do is they're reaching out to all of the different, I've got a couple of them. They host events for disadvantaged businesses to get them knowing about the county, the work here. They provide technical assistance to disadvantaged business certifications. They do a supplier database, and they basically strengthen the regional supply chain. That kind of goes toward the initiative that we're doing for the DBE program. And so they have very successful going out there. And then the $250,000 that's sitting there. We can do all of these, none of these, hold off, whatever is the will of the committee.
So just one thing, Nick, the 4 items there, additional funding, those can be, with maybe the exception of COD, but the 3 of them can be put in next year's budget, I think, right?
No, the DuCom shortfall has to be funded this year. So this is a 2024 deficit.
DuCom can come out of contingency or
absolutely
contingency or ARPA interest. We are going to fund that one. So
we have to.
So we're funding it.
We have not come up with.
We're funding that one. The Choose DuPage and the food insecurity will be for a program for next year to go in next year's budget potentially.
We could, wherever there's a couple different pots of money.
Right.
So any of these can come out of any pots of money.
And then it sounded like, remember Ozog said the COD could use it right now.
They could.
So the program is next year, so they.
Right, but
use it for a while.
they're doing development,
Yeah.
et cetera. of
This
their
is basically just
promotion.
putting an earmark on something and setting it aside so that when they need it, we come forward with the agreement to the board for consideration with COD. But we have a funding source already lined out.
So the point here is that you have to be sure it's going to be spent.
No,
It
not
doesn't-
this one, not this one.
Oh, not this side.
Not this one, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Not the right side.
Oh, I see.
You have no restrictions on ARPA interest.
Oh, I'm sorry. Interest. Got it. Okay, that would be great.
Member Garcia.
Thank you. And perhaps I missed this whole conversation. What is the DuCom shortfall?
So
Explain it to me.
When the sheriff switched from ACDC to DuCom, they did a presentation to say it's going to cost us more money. There's 2 components of that more money. There's the yearly fee, which is the difference of $458,000. And the reason why they added a number of additional users with a state's attorney, neutral exchange. There's a bunch of I think the public department might have some, but it's an increased yearly expense, $458,000. That is our shortfall for 24. We have budgeted accordingly in 25, but we didn't know that for the 24 budget. So we know we're facing that. If we don't do it here, we're going to do it in contingency. Now, there is an additional one-time shortfall the capital buy-in for that, and that they identified of 700,000. That is due January or February of 25. So that will likely do contingency or the surplus. That's a one-time capital. Both of those were identified in the presentation that was given by the sheriff.
Okay, and does the sheriff have any money in his budget to go toward any of this? Or
He has, I mean, he has gone through that, and I know that he has covered some of the shortfall, if I remember correctly. This is what's left.
Right, thank you.
Member Tornatori?
I'm sure all of the items on the right side are deserving, and I have no qualms about that. But you said a number of times that the ARPA interest money is just sitting there.
Yeah.
And we have no time constraints.
You have no time constraints.
So if the 9 or 10 million that we knew we had has not been allocated to any particular issues at this point, why are we concerned about this little extra?
The 9 million you got, this board has already allocated the 9 million interest to over the past 2 years. You as a board have allocated 9 million. This is the only unallocated interest left.
Okay, so when you say it's sitting, so I guess that was, sorry, I'm everybody's question. I thought it was allocated to something, but you keep saying it's just sitting there. We have no reason to worry about spending it. So I don't know if it's just sitting in a pot or it's sitting in a pot, but it's earmarked for certain things.
Yeah, it's sitting in accounts as the actual cash. And like I said, we haven't earned all the 10 million. We're probably 5-6 million because it takes a couple years to generate it. But you've spent some of the ARPA interest. You have not spent the majority of it, but you have up to this point, you have allocated or promised it to certain initiatives that hit in 24, 25, and 26.
Then this makes sense, because if we didn't have it allocated, I don't know why we were here.
No, this is just the final, this is the final piece of it.
All right, fine.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Treasurer Henry came back now and
Has-
updated interest rates haven't declined, they're going up, and so we've got
That's the
more
only reason we're
interest.
here for this, because they came back and said, hey, great news, we're earning more interest by our management than we originally anticipated.
Remember you?
Oh, thank you. So with regard to everything on the right side, I understand that these are all really important items. But I just want to bring to your consideration that there are definitely other things that people are interested in, priorities, just as Vice Chair Krajewski mentioned. And just as an example, with regard to domestic violence, for instance, we know now that domestic violence accounts for the majority, a very large part of the arrests that happen in DuPage County. And I just want to think about, what are we doing with this money that will really help at-risk populations, women and children, and domestic violence survivors, and the fact that there is a lot of earning potential that is basically decimated because of trauma, because of what they've experienced and survived. And I know that Lucy and I are interested in meeting with an organization that works with persons of color, domestic violence survivors. It's called APNAGAR. I just think there is a lot more that we could be doing with the ARPA interest money. I understand there's a DUCOM shortfall, but just as Member Zay had mentioned earlier, why can't we bring more of this money back to the community, back to people who are truly at risk and need something to happen? So I just want to make sure that we don't allocate all this money just yet, just because I think there's much more to be considering. In addition, I understand food security is so important that we, help with that issue, food insecurity. However, it's because I come from a social work background that I understand that these are end users that we're serving. And I would like to see if we can help people before, at the beginning. And throughout, I don't know how many years, we've had these needs assessments for DuPage County, where the issue is always people are seeking transportation, people are seeking affordable childcare. And these are also initiatives that we should be looking into, not just helping the end user at the very end with food insecurity. I would like to talk more about what can we do at the beginning, preventative measures, that kind of thing.
Member Schwarzy?
No, you saw me. So thank you very much, Nick, for putting this, these thoughts together and this plan together. And I'm grateful to this board for continuingly fighting for food insecurity. The conversation is great. My fear is the current money that we have for food insecurity runs out, early next year. And And so the discussion on the right side of coming up with other ideas, and maybe we don't have to make a decision now, that just sort of scares me just a little bit, that I don't want us to have any gaps in this. And I know this board won't allow that to happen, but I'm just expressing my concern because of the way the conversation's going. So I'm very grateful that we're looking at putting $500,000 into our food insecurity for next year. And I hope this board will support that. Thank you.
Member Garcia.
Yeah, a couple more points. I want to make sure if we're talking about things that we want to be working on in the future. The Liberty Park was one thing that was discussed, and I want to make sure that's still on the agenda for perhaps looking into the water situation
So
there.
Liberty Park so that was an initiative that came forward as part of the ARPA funding. We are still working with Westmont. That project is still moving forward with Westmont's. They're going to be building that. So we are not eliminating that. That is still moving forward with Westmont.
Okay, and the second thing was, I do want to see some help down the east branch of the DuPage River. I've been talking to Stormwater about that, and I have had discussions with my mayors and managers, like Vice Chair Krajewski said. So I want to make sure that that's on the agenda too, that because there's still some homes in the village of Lisle actually that are damaged from the 2013 flood. So we want to make sure that we need to take care of this area. So that's something I just want to make sure that we're going to be concentrating on too.
Cahill.
Thank you. I want to go through each of these items. First of all, DuCom is extremely important. It's a larger program than it was with ACDC, therefore the shortfall, therefore we need to fund this. I support that 100%. Public safety and DuCom is number one for me in this county. Number two, food insecurity, 100% support Member Schwarzy on this. In my district, food insecurity is a big issue. The food pantries, the lines are longer, is increasing and getting more and more people need food. We got to feed the people in DuPage County. Three, I totally support the MAC program. I believe it brings in economic development, and the arts is something that I'm very supportive of. And of course, Choose DuPage, 100% supportive. I also would like to remind some of our board members that we do have the small business grant programs in each one of the districts. Each of us can identify those organizations that can prevent or help certain issues that are very important to us in our own district. And we are, Nick, going to continue with the small business grant programs going forward.
Not the nonprofit. Yes, the nonprofits, absolutely. I mean, the small business, that was originally the ARPA thing.
I meant nonprofits, yes.
That's a great example to Member Tornatore. We have, if you remember, we spent, I think we budgeted $1,050,000 in 24 and 25 for the small grant.
nonprofit.
Yeah, small nonprofit, absolutely. And that is being funded by the ARPA entrance.
So that is where we can identify those in our own district, where we identify those nonprofits going forward.
Absolutely.
So that's where we can catch things.
Yeah, and we are, just so everybody knows, that program, we've been talking about that with Jeff and Mary Catherine and their team. Obviously, this takes precedent right now, but we learned some stuff in the last one. We're going to be moving that forward probably the second half of 24 as well. So you'll see part 2 of that one coming up.
So I'd like to, call for a consensus on this too today, Vice Chair, if possible.
Member Chaplin. Member Chaplin, are you there?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So just to Member Yu's point, I think it is important that we do start it in all the events that I've attended regarding mental health and issues in our community. A lot of these issues come from trauma. So if we can prevent that trauma, having no food is a trauma. People, as Member Yu mentioned, not having daycare, it's a trauma for the families to try to have these jobs and have some place for their kids to go. I think all of these items on the list, every one of them I support, but I do believe that we need to start rethinking our approach. And instead of meeting people when they're in need, we need to start helping them, provide them with the tools they need so that they don't end up in these situations. So I think it's something that we could look at, and we do have, I believe, funds that we could maybe, look at some of these programs, early intervention programs that help people stay out of these, help them from getting into these traumatic situations. And, we'll put this on the next agenda so that, we can have a discussion, about what people's priorities are at the county board. So we'll put that on one of the next following agendas going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Evans?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm a little, we've had so much conversation here. I'm a little confused. We do not have consensus with the right-hand side. Is that
We're
correct?
still having discussion on it.
Okay, so I feel like we need more discussion, and maybe not today. I think we do need to put it in another meeting, because all of us have different, we all have different issues in our districts, and this is not an all-encompassing, it can't be an all-encompassing list.
It's part of a bigger discussion. I think it's part of, we have contingencies still in this year's budget, right? This year's budget.
There's still contingencies
in this year's budget that we haven't allocated. There'll be a surplus that we'll have to address with some important needs coming up as we're going through the budget. And if we tighten up budgets for 25, we may have additional money that we would allocate in 25's budget. Like I said, professional services is a great example. It's always been 7 million less than what we've allocated every year for the last 4 years. If you tighten it up, maybe it's only a 4 million, you still give it access. You use that for programs that we feel important. I think Member Chaplin said we're going to get maybe on the next agenda at finance, let all the members throw out the things that are important in our districts, so that staff, we don't have to have consensus that there's 10 of us, but 3 or 4, that at least they can come back and see, what the program would look like, how much it costs. And then we have to make the decisions for the 25 budget, for the contingency, even for this ARPA interest, on what we feel is a majority that we want to use the pots for. A lot of you members have great ideas. We got different pots of money we can take it out of, so it doesn't matter. Member Ozog?
Thank you. Can we have a straw poll of who would accept the entire right side?
Sure. Yeah, we can
And
do that
then-
if we have more questions.
And/or item by item?
Yeah. Member Rutledge? Oh,
Thanks,
sorry.
Marion.
remember, you was right in your way on your line there. Get your
So
hand up and I'll see.
I guess my question is, the ARPA interest fund versus the contingent fund, are they both set up to earn the same interest? Because if this earns more interest for us, I think we should spend down the contingency before we start touching this money.
So it's not an easy answer, because the treasurer has unilateral ability to they mainly it's 1 day CDs, 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 12 month. They ladder CDs out there. So I don't think it's as easy to say this is in this CD, that's in that CD, but maybe it is. I mean, I can get the treasurer here. I don't know if it's that big of a difference, to be honest with you.
Okay, then my other question too is, has there been any discussion in all of these funds about the vacant space in the care center that is yet to be purposed?
Well, interesting you should bring that up. We are looking at options about different programs out there, and maybe by within the next couple of months, might be able to bring something before you for consideration. So we are looking at it.
Well, and I'll advocate one more time for a child care center over
Understood.
there.
Brian, Member Zay.
Sure. Member Zay, sorry. They come over and I don't, yeah. All right. Well, Member Zay, sorry, I can't see on the screen, and they usually come over and tell me. Member Zay?
No, nothing for me.
Member Guston. Member.
Gee whiz, Jim.
Member Guston.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to agree with Member Chaplin and Member Zay. We have in Lyle, I was talking to the village there. They've got water issues, obviously, we all know about it, but there's also some ponds that are the water's owned by the park district and the land is owned by the village, that are in flooding capacity. And so we need to have a bigger conversation about all of these things, to be quite honest with you, as to where we can help our communities. And I think we can't do it today, but we need to be able to put lists together and give it to staff and say, these are the things we know that our district finds important. And so we need to see where the fit would be. The other thing is, remember, you brought up the domestic violence thing. Totally agree with you 100%. get to the crisis beforehand. Again, that's one of the programs at Prairie District School District 204 that that they're doing right now. So I would hope that category number 2, we just leave as is and bring it back, but bring it back with all of the other committee, all of the other board members' opinions and thoughts and ideas of things that are important to them and important to their areas, because we don't all get to talk 50 minutes sitting here, nor do we want to. But we do have a lot of important stuff that our mayors and our managers and our residents are telling us that staff wouldn't know about, nor should you know about. So give us that opportunity to put some information together, some initiatives, and then give it to staff and then bring it to the board and see what happens.
Right, now members, they may want to comment because now we're getting more money to stormwater, so. You got your hand up, members, member Desard.
I had to stand to get your attention. First of all, I just wanted to say that a lot of our work is done in committees, so I think there's a disconnect that people are surprised by the left-hand side. But maybe we need a better presentation in this setting about those items, because I'm in human services, for example, and I'm totally sold on the food pantry infrastructure allotment. I'm also in public works, totally sold on the flood mitigation and the HVAC. So maybe we need a better presentation in this, maybe the next finance committee meeting to sell other members, because I am totally on board with each and every item on the left side of the screen. Secondly, I just emailed Mary Catherine asking her, would you please send out a memo reminding us on how the $9.3 million in ARPA interest was spent? And then, oh, go ahead.
We have it on the backup slide.
Oh, is it on this? Okay.
Yeah,
I looked on this.
the ARPA interest rate. So if you could, you guys don't have it, but it's on this.
I don't see the interest.
It's on the, yeah, if you can go forward, I think
You know
it's.
what we'll do? Why don't we'll send it out to all the board members. That's the ARPA. We will send out.
Oh, yeah, this is
where-
the ARPA, not
where
interest.
all of the ARPA interest was allocated. Mary Catherine sent it out.
Okay, and then on the right side of the screen, we don't have to spend any ARPA interest money, do we?
You do not.
Okay, and if we could go back to that ARPA interest screen.
Well, if I could. Member
Yeah, no, go
Krajewski,
ahead.
So if you can go back to the last slide that we had. So we have, I mean, this committee doesn't have to spend any of that right now. The only thing that I would say is somewhat timely that we got to make a decision on at some point is the DuPage shortfall. That's something that absolutely has got to be budgeted and paid for somehow. It's coming up, whether we pay for it out of this or out of contingency. We would like direction just to take that obligation down. But if.
So do we
if
can
the
just see,
committee's okay
do we have
for that-
direction for DuCom?
Well, just to finish my comments,
Oh, sure, sorry, go
Chair.
ahead. Oh, sorry.
My Nick was answering my comments. So on the right side of the screen, I just want to
Sure,
weigh in
sure.
and say that I'm all for paying for the DuCom shortfall, the food insecurity, the MAC program, choose DuPage. And I like Chair Chaplin's idea as well, that at the next finance meeting to bring in local district ideas for spending the rest of the money. Thank you.
I mean, what we could do, I mean, if there is consensus for the right, there is going to be other opportunities. I would ask maybe at that point, members maybe email myself, Jeff, and Mary Catherine, what is happening at your district. We can compile a list, and I mean, you can have that, and I can provide that to the board. And then as we have discussions for other funding, we can use it for this, we can use it for the contingency, we can use it for surplus, however you'd like to do it. I don't know if it sounds like.
Well, I would suggest more member Chaplin put it on a finance meeting so we all can discuss it. Just all of us throw out the ideas, because everybody sends you stuff. But at least you can see what other members think too, but not making decisions, but just throwing out the ideas of what you're hearing in your district. number of people brought up many items that they would like and feel passionate about, and I see other people nodding their heads.
And
which
just to follow up on my comments, I really wish that Nick would be able to give a little presentation on the flooding mitigation in the HVAC, maybe next
I'd love to.
finance meeting, because I'm totally sold on it,
Yeah.
but other people aren't in
No,
public.
we already
works.
gave them, I think you stepped out. Remember at the start, I think you may have stepped out, but everybody gave the census on the left side to go forward with everything on the left. I think that was when you would stepped out, but we've given Nick the consensus on the
We are
left
proud of
side.
our projects though, so we'd
Yeah.
love to.
Yeah. So I think it sounds like most people aren't for everything on the right side, it's just depending whether it's now or not. So I know we have consensus to move forward on the right side, but we have other pots of money in a budget coming up that we're gonna want to give staff direction and what's important. And so as they're planning the contingency pot, they're contemplating next year's budget, or we're contemplating next year's budget, what we're gonna put in there. And we may be cutting other areas or tightening the budgets up. Yes.
So are we bringing the right side back to another meeting, the next meeting?
Up to
No,
you.
we're
For
giving,
the chair or?
we're just giving
for Chair
consensus.
Chaplin, or are we voting on that and then finding some money?
We're not
elsewhere
voting,
for
we're
other
just gonna
things?
give
You're not-
consensus to go on the right side. Is that, raise the hands if everybody's okay with the 4 items on the right side? Can I see what's on the screen? So keep your hands up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Plus a couple on, so sounds like yes.
So Member Krajewski, it sounds like we have general consensus for the left and right, which is fine, but if the members could forward any initiatives that you guys have, what we'll do is we will compile, once we get those, we'll compile a list of everything, forward that to all the members, and then whenever that's ready, whether that's the first meeting, if member Chair Chaplin is okay with that, we can bring that list then for a little bit of discussion to finance and board. And then over the next couple months, as different funds maybe become available, we can look at that, but that would be very beneficial if we could get whatever initiatives you may have. But we will move forward on the left and the right on agreements, knowing that you still have $250,000 that isn't allocated to anything on that as well.
Member Chaplin?
Thank you. Yes, and I don't know if some of the members are there, but Nick, we definitely will have a meeting, and I'm envisioning it maybe to be similar to the bucket meeting that we had. People bring their ideas forward, we put it in buckets, and then we see which ones we want to move forward with, and which ones we can't. I think that would be great. Maybe we can dedicate maybe an hour or call a special call to decide how we want to spend these ARPA interest funds going forward. That would be how I envision it. Once people send things into you, we put them in those buckets, then we decide how we want to spend it.
And Chair Chaplin, what we'll do is we'll see the number that we get. And if we get a number of them, obviously maybe we're talking a special call. If there's not that many, we could have just an item on the finance agenda, whether that's the first meeting in August, second meeting in August. There's no rush on that, as long as knowing that the rush is we need to get it resolved this year, because as we spend through contingency and surplus.
And these member items may be even baked into the budget next year and the year after.
Correct.
So we may say, we want to start seeing $1 million a year in food insecurity, or the $1 million small not-for-profit programs, make those part of our ongoing budgets going forward. So that would be in the budget, not necessarily coming out of ARPA interest or contingency, but
to your point, if we are going to put these in the 25 budget, probably we do have a quicker deadline with that one, because the chair will be releasing the 25 budget at the beginning of September. So we need to hit the first meeting in August if we're going to be considering for 25 budget. So I would say if I could have these by, would 2 weeks be enough for the committees to maybe get me ideas? Would that be okay? Then we can get something together for the first meeting in August.
Member Desart?
Thank you. I just want a little clarification from Human Services Chair Shorzy. I believe you said that those small entity grants that we gave away this fall, that's a program for 3 years already, right? Or do we need to build that into the budget again? Or is it already in the budget for 2
it's-
more years?
So that money for the next 2 cycles, I think, are in ARPA interest. So we are absolutely funded for that. Whether we build it in the budget or not, we'll figure out how to mechanically get it done. But that one is funded and ready to go.
Okay, thank you, because people have been asking me and I said, yeah, it's good
Yeah,
for 2 years. I just want to
absolutely.
make sure. Thank you.
And the last item that I would suggest too is we look at the cannabis tax that comes in, and I know with the new CRC center being built, that we may want to look at dedicating a certain amount of that every year going forward, a discussion for the future. And I think I've been told that I hit my 10 o'clock and we have to adjourn. So any last questions here? Great discussion. Motion to adjourn. Oh, new business, old business. Well, that was sort of old business, new business. Okay, now